Just as I got here, I startled a whole flock of partridges. They were all behind, they were all here. And then one got left behind and flew out after all the others. I think they were partridges, kind of dark with a white fleck on their crests. I don't know where they were. They must have just been sitting there. They were good. And went. Just before that, I was thinking, can I understand why in 1868 why a frontier would do that? And what was it based on? Because usually you express a frontier in some kind of words, unless you've got some coordinate system, some established grid with a datum or data which would settle the matter. You could say on the oh, that was one. That's how they fly. You would have some kind of transverse Mercator grid like the Ordnance Survey grid in the UK, and you would have a datum and you would have markers, and you would establish it like that if you were going on some geographical latitude as marking the frontier, or if you went on a straight line you would do that. But I don't know, what was the state of the USGS in 1868. God, I love those USGS maps. That whole database of theirs is absolutely beautiful. Anyway, because this is such a characteristic hill. I mean, it's almost a perfect Gaussian bell curve from any side you look at it. It's just got that with a point of inflection here and here. And it's symmetrical. It's an incredible hill. Why you wouldn't make that a frontier? And look, out in the distance there, I don't know if you can see on the phone, there's another hill, and it looks like the fence goes straight up that hill to the top. But it's all eroded to one side. Looks like they did build the fence right over the hill or something. Now I was thinking about that concrete serpent on top. There was something concreted up there, a cross or something, I suppose. Something not very big. You hear that motorbike down there? This is the story I was going to tell. I was living at this place called Sadiri, and how I got to live there was I met Rusi. I can't remember her surname. Her surnames. She's a native of San Jose de Uchipiamonas, and she was Lars' girlfriend. And Lars was a Norwegian guy who lived there for several years, and he was kind of nominally an agricultural engineer or something like this, some kind of horticulturalist. But he had lots of grand projects for the village, and he got funding from Norway, and he built stuff there. He built, with funding from Norway, he had the Casa Grande built, and it's a beautiful building. They didn't have one before that, so they had a meeting place, and then they used to discuss things, and he started a dairy project. He started all sorts of things, and the story I read about him was that he was also interested in shamanism, and he must have been taking some sort of psychedelics. And there was another shaman, I think it was Don Raimundo's father in the village at the time, who was a friend of his. And Lars would go getting himself lost. This is according to Simon Chapman. Lars would go get lost in the forest and come back days later almost dead. And he would say that his spirits had brought him back. And they'd talk about this with the shaman. And anyway, Ruth married a guy who started this bird watching business called Sadiri, I think. It's near Tumapasa, right at the entrance of the Madidi National Park as you go from Tumapasa on the road to San Jose. And Ruth gave me a job because I was just rattling around in San Jose, and there was a party for something. I think it was a college graduation, and I got horrendously drunk. I don't know how I think somebody might have spiked something, because I don't know how I got so awfully drunk so quickly. But anyway, I was passed out for I don't know how long, maybe 12 hours or something. And they told me things I don't believe, that I certainly have no recollection of, that I'd done, that I was crying and saying that I didn't know who I was. And honestly, you guys, I think that's most of you, isn't it? Most of the time. I think you just project. There's another one. They're everywhere. I don't know why I haven't noticed them before. And there's a border chopper. Anyway, so Ruth married a guy who owned several parks in Bolivia, several tourist businesses where people are invited to, they stay, some down near Santa Cruz somewhere. But this Sadiri was a joint venture with the village, with the pueblo of San Jose de Uchubiamonos. And they'd built it with their lumber, and they'd got some kind of agreement, and it was a really nice place. I'm horrified at the amount of mara that they used just for flooring, for putting down the floors, but never mind. I was sitting in there looking at this thing, saying, oh shit, well we can lift all this stuff up, we can reuse the mara and put down, rollbray or something else in those panels and fix it up again. It's not too bad. But I was looking after this place in the end of 2013 for, I think, quite a bit of the month of November and December and January. And they gave me an allowance. I had food. It was really lovely, and they wanted to pay me, but I refused to accept money. I said, you just give me pocket money and what I need, which included coca and cigarettes. And so I pretty much had all the coca I could chew and all the cigarettes I could smoke and all the food I could eat, much more actually, because they kept on doing things like, they brought way too much food, and they brought lots of meat that I didn't really want, and then it went off before I could eat it. Oh, what a nightmare. But anyway, so I was there for 3 months, I think. And this place Sadiri in the local language, or in the Takana language, it's Takana, I think, it means broken arrow. And I'm sure it was on an old Inca trail. But this place was amazing. It was full of strange noises at night. That motorbike reminded me, because I used to hear a motorbike coming over. It's a big, powerful, something like a 500 or 700cc single cylinder. Bop, 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 bop. It used to sound like it was coming up over the hill, and it never turned up. But I would just hear this motorbike noise, and then it would go away. And I often heard people approaching, but then no one approached. I would hear what I thought were people walking along talking, and then nobody showed up. And at night I used to hear noises as if there was a family living behind me, right in the same... I lived in the gatehouse down in front of the Parque Nacional office. There was a gatehouse. It was a sort of storage location and it was owned by the San Joseñans, the village. They had built this as a stopover. But it was also, part of it was storeroom for Sadiri. And this was all separate from the Madidi National Park guards who were in the place opposite. Although apparently the Madidi guards used to sleep in this place. And they're lots of nice ghost stories. Not nice, horrible ones. Lots of ghost stories about that. But I just used to hear a family in the back happily getting on with things, talking amongst themselves, clanking dishes and pots, preparing a meal. And I would sit alone at night until 1 in the morning, chewing cocoa on the front of this thing. I've apparently got 44 minutes of whenever I started. So. I would sit there chewing cocoa and listening to the noises, and often also when I walked down towards Tumapasa, I used to hear sounds of children playing down in the valley, but I really don't think anyone was down there playing in the valley because it was such a long way away from Tumapasa, and I often heard sounds of kids shouting as if I imagine they had built a swing or something and they were swinging and shouting and playing. And the thing I wanted to talk about was wind. One night, wind and bats. One night, I can't remember what order these things happened in, but one night I was up there and I heard a noise like wind coming up the valley from the Peru side, from the Peru direction, from the north, which is also the direction of the village of San Jose when you're walking to Tumapasa. And this wind noise just started out, but then it just built and built and built and built until I was absolutely certain that it was some sort of tidal wave that was going to hit this. I was sure that it was water coming. And as it built up to as it crescendoed, I was so scared. I ran to the back of the veranda. It was a very, very wide veranda. There's a very wide veranda. I don't know if it's still standing, because I'll tell you more about that later. The place basically started collapsing within a month of this. But I ran to the back. I was so sure that I was just about to die in a monstrous sort of some crazy fucking tidal wave. Imagine if Lake Titicaca had just been evacuated through a hole blown in the mountainside. That's the sort of thing I was thinking. Gigatons of water blasting through and smashing everything. And there's a place on the map called San Miguel del Bala on the river, and it's quite interesting. It's got a funny story about it. So my head was full of stuff, thinking about, how could you actually achieve something like that, back in the 18th century? Well, you could actually do it. You could probably do anything with hydraulic force from Lake Titicaca. I was full of those ideas. So, because when you've got that much water at a potential of 4 kilometers of altitude above sea level, that's a lot of energy. So that happened, and then it passed, and it was okay, and I carried on. I guess I sat there for another half an hour and thought, that was interesting, and went to sleep. But another night, I was sitting there, I don't know whether it was before or after, and I was just chewing my cocoa and smoking cigarettes and thinking about, what I was thinking about was electronics and concurrency and all of that. And because when I started smoking again, all my things that I'd thought about when I was a teenager and had been smoking started coming back to me. So I was thinking about these paged memory systems for 6502 processors and my multiple 6502 processor board design for a computer, and my multiple, this crazy idea I came up with was multiple 6522 PIAs changing their own addresses, because the 6522 PIA allows you to set lines high and low and things, and they could in principle be used as its own address selection. You just need a few gates to make sure this stuff happens cleanly, and you can do it. But you get, what was fascinating me was that you get hardware with semantics which you can't tell from outside. So any software that you run on this machine, it won't be possible for anyone else to analyze it unless they know the exact state of the machine. They have to know the physical state of the PIAs to know what the addresses mean, because you can shuffle data lines as well. I was thinking about all this stuff. So that was because I was smoking cigarettes again. And anyway, and that stuff, a lot of those designs Jeremy Rose had for a while they disappeared from my life, but Jeremy Rose had them in his house, because when I left college and I left all my stuff was roses. My record collection, my notes, my junk. I don't know if I ever really collected it all back again. I can't remember. I'm not very good at looking after my stuff. So anyway, I was sitting up there smoking, thinking about electronics and how to do a gate. I was thinking about how to do gates that act as semaphores for concurrent programming. And I was thinking also about a new scientist thing on. They used to do these puzzles or something about how you do two-way switches for electric lights. So if you have a light on the hall landing and a light at the bottom and a light at the top, then how can you make it so that any of those switches will turn the light on or off? And I generalized this principle, and you can do n-way switching and in a fairly obvious way, and I was wondering whether that would be useful for synchronizing processes. So I was thinking about that. And a bat just dropped dead in front of me, about a foot in front of me, a dead bat, bang, stone dead. And it had just started getting colder, so I don't know if that was it, or maybe the thing had just died of lung cancer or something. But not shortly after that, there was an incredible rainfall, a lot of rainfall, and a lot of landslides, all in the mountains around me. I used to hear them ripping whole slices out of the sides of mountains. As one tree would fall, and then all this waterlogged red clay that they have up there, that would all just come crashing down. It would take everything out. Huge landslips, taking all the trees out in sort of tens or maybe hundreds of square meters of mountainside. And it rained and rained and rained. It's the rainy season, and eventually the road became impassable, and there was a huge landslide just after some people from the village had passed through, because people used to pass through and stay the night and then go on in the morning. And not long after some people left, there was an enormous landslide, and I was terrified that some of them had been killed in it. But it took out about 20 or 30 meters of the road. It was absolutely impassable. It was just a uniform slope of kind of 45 degrees of mud and small rocks, and all the trees and everything were at the bottom. But that road, the sister of Riccardo Muti used to live. He worked with Lars. He was one of Lars' best friends, I suppose. He and his family lived at San Jose, and around the time I was there, they kind of moved to Ruri, and they went to live on that island in Ruri, in between the two branches of the river. There's an island that used to be a Seca Puerto, but they did some deal and they redirected the river, and the mayor of Ruri claimed all this land, which originally had been kind of neutral in the middle of the river. Because he'd shut one of the arms off, it all became part of the province of Beni instead of being kind of neutral. He became part of the province of Beni, and he was then the mayor, and it was part of Rurinabaki, and he was able to develop it and sell the properties, but it flooded every year. Anyway, Ricardo then moved there, and I went to stay at his house after I left Sidiri, which was quite difficult because by then the road was completely destroyed. And his sister worked for the council, and she was also a friend of this governor. I think he's the governor of La Paz, Costa Rica. He's a Masista, friend of Avo's. The governor of Costa Rica, I think she was a friend of his, and she has a photographic record of the destruction on that road to San Jose, and that year it was just incredible. It was as if, something very magical had happened, and I think it just wiped that road out. Something had decided that this road needed to shut now. My God, it was incredible. So all these wonderful things happen. This is my point. Like when I go and sit down under that tree, and I happen to have my camera, so I got a picture, but these crazy things happen, and if we don't pay attention to them, they don't mean anything. But in the end, what means anything? It's these things have more meaning, way more meaning than any of the words written on a $1 bill. That's what I think. That's what I think.